I want to show to you how to make tagliatelle or fettuccine or pappardelle. The dough is always the same at home, the way they do it in northern Italy. In southern Italy, people do the same kind of pasta with a different kind of flour and with a different procedure, namely without eggs and oil. But today I'm going to show to you how they make them in central and northern Italy, specifically in Bologna. So we start by measuring 500 grams of the so-called 00 flour. The 00 flour is a white flour, okay? Or wheat, of course. And is the one that is used also to make bread or to make sometimes cakes. So we measure 500 grams. Okay. Then, for each 100 grams of flour, we use 1 whole egg. The eggs must be of very good quality. So my advice to you is to buy eggs that are, yes, more expensive, the free-range ones, organic ones, but whose result is going to be much better. So you take the eggs and you start breaking them in the center of your bowl. Be careful not to have pieces of eggs falling into the mixture. So now we add a pinch of salt. Certain people don't put salt. I prefer to put salt. And a tiny bit of olive oil. Again, these two passages depend on your preferences, okay? Then with a fork, we can do this also with our hand, but I prefer to do it with the fork. We break the eggs, and while breaking the eggs, we start incorporating slowly from the margin towards the center some flour. This is an operation that you should do carefully, not to get all the flour immediately in, otherwise it clumps up, okay? And you don't want that. Now, where can you find this 00 flour that I told you? At any supermarket, you buy white flour, which has a low protein percent. Where do you see the protein percent? On the side of the package, you see that it is indicated how many protein in percentage the flour, the particular flour, contains. Now, low percentage is considered between 7 to 10, okay? High percentage is instead 12 to 14. The high percentage types of flour are used mostly for bread and for pizza, focaccia, and stuff like that. The low percentage kind of flour are mostly used to make pasta or to make cakes. For example, stuff with short crust or cakes of any sort. For pasta, when you make this kind of pasta with eggs, which, as I told you, is typical mostly of northern Italy, you use the 00 flour, which is a weak kind of flour. For those of you who are familiar with it, you can find the 00 directly from Italy at Scoop. But as I said, you can buy any flour, any white flour with a low protein percentage. So we mix a bit more. At this point, we can go in with our eggs. So we want to incorporate in the mixture all the flour. This part is a bit messy, but one thing that you should know, it's never good to work the dough for pasta with a machine, because the machine tends to apply too much strength, which in turn makes you run the risk to end up with a dough that is too elastic. Because when you apply too much strength to a dough, the flour develops gluten. And you don't want that for pasta, okay? So let me clean my hands so that I don't feel hindered in my operation. And then we start doing this, okay? We slowly get all the bits that you see here. We try to incorporate. It's gonna take a bit of time, but it's fine. If you see that your dough is too stiff, is too tough, you can add a tiny bit of water with the tip of your fingers. In this case, I don't think I need that. I just need to be patient and keep incorporating the flour. But we'll see as we go. Or if you don't want to add water, you can add a bit, really a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of olive oil. Don't add more eggs though. I want to show you this moment, this process particularly well, because this is the crucial passage really, how you make the dough. All the rest will depend on how well the dough has been made. So this passage must be observed carefully. The kind of movement you want to do, at least the one I do, my wife has another technique, and each person has a different technique, in fact, on how to knead the dough, is that of flattening the dough and stretching it. Because we want the dough to slowly become smooth. Now you see these bits here? These bits are getting dry. And I don't want to deal with them. I don't need them. So I won't try to incorporate them, because they will never fully incorporate. And they will be just unpleasant in the final product. So if these tiny bits get away, just discard them. That's something that you do when you make egg pasta. When you make pasta with semolina flour, the thing is different. I'm going to show you another time how to make pasta with semolina flour. Semolina flour is the flour that is made out of durum wheat, okay? It's still wheat, but of a different variety. And it's a kind of wheat that is more common in southern Italy, in Greece, and in general all over the Mediterranean. But today, as I told you, we're dealing with normal wheat, which is also called soft wheat. Now, this you have to do for about 10 minutes. Okay? I have to stretch. Unfortunately, these bits now get thrown away, but back in the day, my grandmother would give them to the chicken, for example, or to the pigs outside. So you see, the dough has to be not soft. I mean, it's not super hard, you see. That's the texture. But it's not sticky either. It shouldn't stick to your hands. Now notice another thing, that as I'm kneading, the surface here remains clean. This is a sign that your dough has the right humidity, because when it keeps sticking to the working surface, it means that it is too wet. So we keep going this, like this. You need a bit of strength, but it's good exercise. My advice is to use this part of the hand, okay? This part of the hand, you roll it, and then this, then towards you again, like this. And you go ahead like this, okay? With this base, as I told you, with this dough, you can make fettuccine, tagliatelle, you can make pappardelle, which actually are my favorite. The bowl with wild boar sauce is fantastic. You can also make lasagne, you can make tortellini. This is the base for a variety of things. You can make maltagliati and then use the maltagliati, which literally means the poorly cut, in a soup, in a stew, or with peas, green peas, fantastic. Now, where I come from in southern Italy, my paternal grandmother never made pasta with egg. My maternal grandmother did. My paternal grandmother did only the kind of pasta that is typical of southern Italy, the one made with semolina and water. My maternal grandmother, instead, every now and then, made also this kind of pasta, which is, it has a different texture at the end. It's a bit richer in terms of calories because it has eggs. And goes very well with certain sauces, above all the meaty ones. Ragu alla bolognese, for example, which I show you how to make in my blog, or ragu with wild boar. Now, another time I'll show you how to make a ragu. And I'll tell you the history of this most Italian of all sauces, ragu. There are many kinds of ragu, depending on where you are in Italy. And although the most famous kind of Italian ragu is the ragu alla bolognese, from Bologna in northern Italy, the origin of ragu in Italy is to be traced in Naples in the 1700s, when the court, the royal court, influenced as it was by French culture, started hiring a lot of French chefs, les monsieur, they were called, monsieur, which became in Neapolitan monzou. So ragu is actually a French word, spelled R-A-G-O-U-T. Then in Naples, these French recipes, such as ragu, which is a meat stew basically, got adapted by the Neapolitans and turned into Neapolitan dishes. So you have the Neapolitan ragu, which is actually the first ragu with tomato that we know, used to season pasta. The Bolognese ragu is a further adaptation of that first ragu. And as I told you, the ragu alla Bolognese goes very well with the tagliatelle or the pappardelle, with pasta all'uovo in general. But then there are other kinds of ragu. There is the ragu alla siciliana, ragu alla pugliese, alla calabrese, depending, okay? So one day I'll show to you, for example, the Ragu alla Napoletana, which is the one I grew up with mostly. But for now, let's stay in Bologna. Okay, I think that we're almost there. You see how the pasta now, how the dough is opposing more resistance to my kneading. It means that it starts developing the gluten, which I don't want it to develop fully, because otherwise, as I told you, I'll end up with a very stiff kind of product. Okay. All right. A bit more. Oh yeah. Voila. Okay, ecco. So now we close the dough, okay? So what you want to do is to flatten it up a bit so that it has already the shape that it needs to have for you then to roll it. At this stage, we have to wrap it up with clean wrap, plastic wrap, and let it rest either 1 hour if we want to use it the same day. It has to rest, okay? It has to rest. Or overnight in the fridge. When then you want to use it, you take it out, you let it rest outside for half an hour, and then I'll show you tomorrow, because we're doing this tomorrow, how you cut the pasta.